Hey everyone, and welcome to another video in this rewriting crash course series. Today what I'm going to be looking at is some of the specific ways that you are putting your screenplay down onto that page. So previously we've been looking at general big story concepts, right? Like conflict and structure and characters. Now we're going to be looking at putting your script down onto that page specifically. Now, I'm not going to be going through how to write a screenplay in regards to like scene heading and how dialogue is formatted. You can find blogs that are going to tell you that in 2 seconds. I'm not going to waste your time with that. What I'm going to be doing is when you're writing action lines, when you're writing that flow, how do you know what how do you know what sentence structure is good? How do you know whether or not this particular line is getting the message across? That sort of idea. Now, if you're interested in working with me one-on-one to fix your screenplay, there is a link below for that where you can book a call with me and we can talk about working together. Other than that, let's go ahead and get into the video here. So when you're actually putting your script down onto the page, right? You're actually building those sentences, you're writing that scene. Okay, there's a few things that I want you to be thinking about as you're writing. So one thing I want you to think about is the fact that you are painting a picture, okay? So what I mean by this is when somebody is reading your screenplay, they should be able to kind of see the shots in their own head, okay? So we want to be able to be visualizing the movie line by line, ideally, as it's being read. Because if let's say you're submitting the script to a competition or a production company or an agent or whoever, you want them to be engrossed and be able not only to see this script as a good story on the page, but to be able to see the vision of the movie, right? So what you're doing is you're trying to paint the vision of ultimately the movie that is made off of your 100-page Word document, right? So this is something I want you to be thinking about. So if we can come over here and look at some scripts. So I have this script here. So this is the Whiplash script. And this is one of my favorite screenplays. I'm going to link this below. And this is a fantastic lesson essentially in seeing the movie on the page. So one of the things that you'll notice as you read this story is it's a lot of shorter sentences, fast-paced, and because of that, we really get the flow of the movie. We get the feel of it. We get the pace. We get a visual representation of what these shots should look like, and that is one of the things that makes this screenplay strong on the page. So Andrew exits, hurries off, for example, right? We have a noun, a verb, and then another action, and that's it, right? And a lot of the story is built with this sort of brevity, right? You'll see a lot of this as well. He takes his items, dash, popcorn, raisinets, 2 sodas, and heads off, right? So it's quick explanation, quickly understanding what we are seeing and putting that onto the page, creating the visual of the movie that we're watching, okay? So, and you'll see, let's see. So even here, right, where core only today, I can't waste time with alternates. Carl, stay still. What? ... question mark. Andrew looks just as shocked. Okay. These sorts of lines, right? What we're doing here is we're getting the emotion here. We're getting exactly what we're seeing. So we're seeing Carl, right? Carl, stay still. We're seeing this emotion here, this confusion, this not understanding what's going on. And then on Andrew, right? So we know that we're supposed to sort of be on Carl, and then we're cutting over to Andrew. We're seeing Andrew as well, right? So this is all on the page. Even in this line, we're getting the specific emotion. It's technically, well, it's 2 sentences and then this sort of exclamation here, but it's very, very brief. We're getting, okay, we're moving from this character, we're seeing this character's reaction, and we're moving forward. So not only is it playing as a story, it also is written in a way where you're able to see the flow of, okay, we're looking at this character, then we're looking at this character, we're waiting for a reaction here, right? That is how you want your story to feel on the page, because that the film essentially being on the page as much as possible is going to help you to actually get this thing made into something, right? Especially if you're handing this off to, let's say, a director that isn't you want them to be able to see the vision of the movie, not just read a good screenplay, because there's a difference. So this is, again, how you're going to want this to flow. And again, if you should read through this screenplay, right? Because then you can start to see what are some of the choices that Damien Chazelle is making when he's writing this. So, a bubble pops up, one new voicemail, one new text message, right? How is he actually formatting this into the script? Here's a text, you free Thursday. What does that look like on the page? And, this is on a line by itself. So understanding that flow is going to help you actually put your story down onto the page better. So first off, you should be reading all the screenplays I recommend here and more, right? Because the more that you read good screenplays and understand how they are placed onto the page, it'll help you write yours, as well as reading bad screenplays will help you with more of your core story and understanding what isn't working in them. So another thing that I want to talk about here, and this is a thing that I have done many times, and is something that you are likely doing in your own writing, and it's super simple. It's a simple fix, but it is this sort of 3X rule. Then this is something I learned from Scriptfella, youtube.com/Scriptfella, if you want to check out Dominic. So essentially, it's something that happens in your dialogue where you have a character essentially say, "What? I can't believe this has happened. How could you do this?" Right? So it's like they say the same thing 3 times. What? I can't believe this has happened. How could you do this? This is something that I've done again and again. It's something that I see a lot of other writers do, where we just have this desire to place that same energy, right, 3 times in the story. And don't do that, right? Cut 2 of those out, leave 1, and then the story flows better. We, as the audience and as the reader, understand what's going on. We get that emotion, and then we go to the next piece, right? So this really, ultimately, this kind of comes down to say things once in your story, right? Whether this is in your dialogue or whether this is in your action lines, don't repeat things to the audience. Tell us what's going on. Tell us what the character says, in the sense of what is their emotion and the energy they are giving to another character, not the same thing 3 times. Say things once in your action lines as well. Don't, you'll say things like the character turns and looks and steps towards. It's like, okay, don't say turns, looks, and steps toward. Like, pick what he's doing, right? He rushes over. Something like that, right? So then we are actually saying the thing 1 time in the story, rather than bloating every single sentence and action line and line of dialogue with unnecessary words. So if your story is working on the fundamental level, like you have a philosophical conflict, your characters are working, your structure is working, your scenes have intention, and if you can just clean up some of these little things, like, you're going to have something that's really, really strong. Right? So don't say things twice. Don't 3X your lines of dialogue, this sort of thing. It's very easy to do. Essentially don't do it. One of the things that I also wanted to talk about is style. Okay. So this is something that you'll hear people talk a lot about, is like writing style and being stylistic and this sort of thing. Now, if you look at a lot of different screenplays, right? So let's look at some here. So if we look at Django Unchained, this is, Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained. So we see he has kind of a novel type style, you could say, right? So we have so much action lines here. And we have just this like literally the first couple pages is just action lines, and then we get into the story here, right? And generally this is not how you would be writing, but he gets to do this because he is directing it. Obviously he has contextually a certain amount of power in how the story ends up getting made, and because of that he's able to take certain liberties, right? However, if you actually read his story, he still isn't repeating himself again and again and adding some of these amateur problems. And so just because he has a block of action lines doesn't mean that what's in those sentences aren't pushing the story forward. And that is ultimately the goal, right? The goal, you should not be thinking, okay, well, is this too much action, or is this too much this? Is this too much that? Like, first and foremost, be thinking about, okay, is this particular piece moving the story forward in a clear, concise way where I'm not repeating myself, I'm not giving unnecessary information, this sort of thing. Then from there, we can talk about other elements like, okay, how much action line should you have on a page when you're trying to send a script to a producer, that sort of thing, right? And this would be a lot, right? If this is your page one, like as somebody who read scripts, if this is your page one, it's frustrating to read. It's also frustrating to read a 170-page screenplay, but again, this is Tarantino. So, and when you read his dialogue as well, right? It's like, what is pushing the story? What is showing us the characters? And you find that characters talk a lot and a lot of things happen, but they're not repeating themselves, right? They're not constantly repeating themselves, and they're not repeating specific emotions, right? And that's the thing too, is that you'll get a point where you're saying the same action a million times, you're saying the same emotion again and again, and that's not what we want when we're trying to write, a good script here. Okay, so if we look at The Social Network by Aaron Sorkin, you will see this, right? Very different from Tarantino's style, which is tons of dialogue, page, barely an action line, and it's just pages and pages of dialogue here. Okay, so is this better or is this worse? It's like, well, that's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is, are these lines pushing the story forward, and are characters repeating themselves? Are action lines being repeated? Or do we actually have a flow from line to line, from scene to scene, from action line to action line that is actually moving the story forward? That is first and foremost what you should be focusing on. So this isn't any more or less right than how Tarantino is writing his story, but what is right and what is wrong is writing a story that doesn't have that flow. It doesn't actually push the story forward consistently again and again and again. So you can write in all these sorts of styles as long as you are adhering to that core rule, which is that your story needs to be moving forward. Characters' relationships are developing, the conflict is developing, the story is moving forward. And that is the big difference. Now, one thing that I will also say about style, let me come back to here. So what I see a lot of people do is they try to immediately write in a style of a writer that they like. And this is something that I've done as well, right? There's multiple of my scripts that look like Sorkin because I like how he writes dialogue. And, then it looks like I end up, trying to copy his work. But what I have found for me is that your specific style will come out not out of you trying to be stylistic, but out of your consistency towards writing a great story. Because here's the reality. When you focus all of your time and effort on writing the story in the best way possible, you will realize that you are an individual person, obviously, and that story will feel like something that you write. And so essentially, to me, style ends up being a byproduct of your focus on writing well, right? Rather than you putting style as some sort of, pedestal, up on this pedestal for you to achieve, some sort of writing style that doesn't have any depth to it. Like, okay, you write more dialogue, cool. It's like, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? But the more you write consistently and the more you write well, the more the elements of your style are going to come out. For example, you're going to be interested in certain genres over others. You're going to be interested in certain ways that scenes flow than others. You're going to be interested in certain types of characters than others. You're going to write dialogue in a certain way because it's how you write. All of this comes out when you're being consistent. So rather than putting so much effort and focus on style, focus on writing the best that you can and allow your style to come through as you're writing the best that you possibly can. Because right now, if you're writing stylistically, but you actually aren't writing well, then it doesn't matter how stylistic your writing is if it's not good, right? So we need to put the right things in the right order. And this whole rewriting series is about putting the right things in the right order. Why is this video about writing action lines in a certain way and understanding dialogue last? because philosophical conflict, characters, and structure are way more important than this, right? In the process of you learning. Now, obviously, you want to learn every aspect of it, but you need to focus on the right things in the right order. So that's essentially what I have for you. Now, under this video, you will find some screenplays linked. And if I couldn't find links for particular ones, I'll tell you which scripts that you need to go out and find and read, because ultimately you're going to learn more and more about how the flow of a screenplay works by reading good screenplays. And then you're going to read bad screenplays when you're looking at how to fix and find problems, right? So reading bad screenplays is super beneficial for your writing, but it has a different purpose than reading good screenplays. And when you're reading good screenplays, like let's say Whiplash, it is a fantastic study in dialogue, in action lines, in being brief, and understanding how to put the story on the page in a way where it can be visualized by any reader who is reading it. And if you can do that, then you will be looking good. So that's what I have for you today. I hope this was interesting. I hope this was helpful to you. And I will see you guys in the next video.